Some aircraft are so strange that they look more like a bad sketch than something meant to fly. Aviation history is full of sleek icons, but hidden beneath those legends are designs that left pilots, engineers, and even spectators scratching their heads. These weren't just ugly, they were outright baffling. So, what exactly went wrong? And how did these disasters ever make it off the drawing board? To understand, we need to start at the beginning with one of the most outrageous designs ever, the Caproni CA-60. Imagine a flying boat with 9 wings stacked like a monstrous wedding cake. Giovanni Battista Caproni dreamed it would carry 100 passengers across the Atlantic in unprecedented luxury. The vision was bold, but the execution was horrifying. The aircraft looked like an absurd caricature of aviation, an unholy mix of biplane, triplane, and ocean liner. Its maiden flight in 1921 ended exactly how skeptics feared. Struggling to lift its massive frame, the CA-60 staggered into the sky before violently crashing into Lake Maggiore. The wreckage confirmed what critics had predicted. 9 wings created drag far beyond control. Instead of a revolutionary airliner, the world saw a lumbering monstrosity that barely held together. Engineers knew instantly this was not the future of passenger travel. The crash destroyed the only prototype, and Caproni never rebuilt it. Yet its haunting photos remain legendary, a hulking beast reminding us how ambition can turn to folly. It's a spectacle so bizarre that many still can't believe it flew, even for a few seconds. If the Caproni CA-60 was over-engineered madness, the Christmas bullet was reckless under-engineering. Dr. William Christmas promised a strutless biplane with wings that would flap like a bird. In reality, his design was pure death trap. Built in 1919, the bullet ditched external bracing wires, vital supports that kept wings intact. Instead, Christmas boasted his revolutionary flexible wings would create natural lift. It sounded innovative. It was catastrophic. On its very first test flight, the bullet's wings tore clean off mid-air, sending the aircraft and pilot crashing to the ground. Tragically, the same fate struck its second prototype, killing a second pilot. Undeterred, Christmas continued marketing his design as a success, even claiming it had flown faster than any plane of its time. History, however, records it as one of the most dangerous frauds in aviation. The aircraft's misshapen, skeletal look matched its flawed engineering. With its thin, awkward fuselage and unstable frame, it appeared fragile even before takeoff. It didn't just look ugly, it embodied the word unsafe. The Christmas bullet remains infamous not for beauty or achievement, but for exposing the fatal cost of reckless ambition masquerading as innovation. From reckless fraud to baffling eccentricity, the Blériot 125 stands as a masterclass in design gone wrong. Introduced in 1928, this French airliner was meant to impress as a modern passenger carrier. Instead, it horrified onlookers with its ungainly silhouette. The fuselage was split into 2 parallel pods, each holding passengers, while the pilot sat awkwardly on top between them. The result looked more like a rolling insect than a serious aircraft. The layout was as impractical as it was ugly. Twin fuselages made boarding and balance a nightmare. Aerodynamically, the bulky design created excessive drag, slowing the aircraft and making it inefficient. Passengers reportedly felt cramped and uncomfortable, while the odd placement of engines and cockpit made the plane a logistical headache. No airline showed genuine interest, and only a single prototype was built. Visually, the Blériot 125 carried none of the elegance associated with its namesake, Louis Blériot, the man who once symbolized daring innovation by crossing the English Channel. Instead, this design was clumsy, slow, and an embarrassment to the brand. Today, it serves as a reminder that even pioneers can misjudge the fine line between creativity and absurdity. The Boeing X-32 was supposed to be sleek, futuristic, and the future of American air power. Instead, it ended up looking like a bloated guppy with wings. Built for the Joint Strike Fighter competition in the late 1990s, the X-32 competed head-to-head with Lockheed Martin's X-35. Boeing prioritized performance over looks, but the result was a chubby fuselage with an enormous chin intake that gave the jet a perpetually stunned expression. Engineers claimed its simplicity was genius. The aircraft had fewer moving parts, which in theory meant reduced maintenance. But its ungainly design wasn't just cosmetic, it had serious implications. The bulky body limited maneuverability, and the massive intake hurt stealth efficiency. Test pilots noted handling quirks, and when Lockheed's design demonstrated smoother vertical takeoff and landing, Boeing's ugly duckling couldn't keep up. Ultimately, the X-35 became the F-35 Lightning II, while the X-32 faded into obscurity. Photos of the prototype still surface online as memes, often compared to cartoon characters or sea creatures. While not a failure in terms of engineering competence, the X-32 is remembered less for innovation and more for proving that sometimes looks really do matter in aviation. The Nimrod AEW-3 was Britain's ill-fated attempt in the 1970s to convert the successful Nimrod maritime patrol aircraft into an airborne early warning platform. Instead of designing from scratch, engineers modified the Nimrod's long fuselage to house enormous radar domes in the nose and tail. The result was ungainly. The sleek lines of the original airframe were destroyed, replaced by a bloated machine that looked heavy, awkward, and visibly unbalanced. Behind the appearance were deeper failures. The radar system, developed by Marconi, never worked reliably. Engineers struggled to integrate the electronics with the airframe, causing delays and spiraling costs. During trials, the aircraft routinely failed to track targets accurately. Software glitches rendered the expensive radars almost useless. By the mid-1980s, billions of pounds had been spent, but the AEW-3 still wasn't combat ready. Despite multiple prototypes, the aircraft never reached operational service. Crews disliked its handling, and its cumbersome modifications reduced efficiency compared to the maritime variant. With NATO allies already operating the proven Boeing E-3 Sentry AWACS, Britain's Nimrod experiment appeared increasingly redundant. In 1986, after nearly 2 decades of wasted investment, the government scrapped the program entirely. The surviving AEW-3s were dismantled, leaving the project as one of the most notorious failures in British aviation history. Today, the Nimrod AEW-3 is remembered not only for its ungainly profile, but also as a warning against forcing unsuitable airframes into roles they were never meant to perform. The pregnant guppy was perhaps the most comical-looking aircraft ever to fly, yet it played a vital role in America's space race. Built in 1962 by Aero Spacelines, it was created to solve a logistical nightmare: how to transport oversized rocket components across the United States. Engineers modified a Boeing 377 Stratocruiser, cutting the fuselage open and expanding it with a massive balloon-like shell. The result looked absurd: tiny wings attached to a swollen, whale-like body. Despite appearances, the pregnant guppy worked. It could carry Saturn rocket stages that no other aircraft could handle, eliminating the need for slow barge transport. NASA embraced it, and the ungainly machine quickly became indispensable. Its interior was cavernous, swallowing rocket sections with room to spare. Though underpowered and awkward in flight, it performed its duties reliably. Public reaction, however, was merciless. Photographs of the guppy drew ridicule, and even NASA staff joked about its cartoonish proportions. Its bulbous frame dwarfed the engines and tail, making it appear perpetually unstable. Yet its contribution was undeniable. Without it, assembling Saturn V rockets would have been slower and costlier. The pregnant guppy later inspired the larger Super Guppy, which carried components for Apollo and, decades later, even Airbus assemblies. Though few survive, the Guppy family remains iconic, not for beauty, but for proving that usefulness sometimes outweighs elegance. Still, its swollen silhouette guarantees it a permanent spot on any list of aviation's ugliest aircraft. The Northrop Tasset Blue, developed in the early 1980s, earned the nickname the Whale for good reason. It was a stealth demonstrator that looked more like a giant vacuum cleaner than a cutting-edge aircraft. With a fat, hump-backed fuselage, flush-mounted intakes, and stubby wings, it appeared clumsy and overweight. Photographs released years later shocked aviation fans who expected sleek lines from a stealth project. Its design, however, was deliberate. Engineers prioritized radar evasion above aesthetics. Tasset Blue's curved surfaces scattered radar waves, while its boxy fuselage minimized detectable edges. Under the skin, advanced sensors tested the concept of real-time battlefield surveillance without revealing the aircraft's position. In flight, despite its awkward looks, the Whale was surprisingly stable and reliable. Over 100 test flights proved it could loiter for long periods, quietly monitoring targets. Even so, its appearance overshadowed its achievements. Unlike the futuristic F-117 stealth fighter, Tasset Blue seemed primitive, ungainly, and almost humorous. Its rotund body and tiny wings invited comparisons to turtles, whales, and even comic book props. To the public, it became a symbol of ugly experimentation rather than sleek innovation. After fulfilling its role, Tacit Blue was retired and eventually placed in the U.S. Air Force Museum. Its innovations fed directly into the B-2 Spirit bomber, one of the most advanced aircraft ever built. Still, its image remains unforgettable. An ugly, blubbery aircraft that proved beauty isn't always required for breakthrough technology. The Ilyushin Tu-40 was the Soviet Union's first jet-powered ground attack aircraft, conceived during the early 1950s to replace piston-driven attack planes. At first glance, the Ilyushin Tu-40 looked bloated and awkward, with oversized intakes dominating its nose and a thick fuselage that lacked aerodynamic grace. Unlike sleeker fighters of its era, it looked cumbersome even sitting idle on the tarmac. Its twin AM-5 turbojet engines were originally mounted side by side under the cockpit. This design quickly revealed a critical flaw. Exhaust gases scorched the fuselage and disrupted gun operation. During firing tests, the nose-mounted cannons blasted shells directly into the engine's airflow, leading to dangerous surges. Engineers scrambled to correct the design by repositioning the intakes further forward and adding long ducts, but the modifications only made the aircraft bulkier and stranger. Operational trials exposed further weaknesses. Handling was heavy, fuel efficiency was poor, and the aircraft's ungainly appearance matched its sluggish performance. Production began cautiously, but by 1956, the Soviet Air Force abruptly canceled the program, citing redundancy with newer fighter bombers. Only a handful of Ilyushin Tu-40s were built before factories shifted to other designs. Today, the Ilyushin Tu-40 is remembered not as a breakthrough, but as a misstep, proof that rushing jet technology into unsuitable roles often led to awkward compromises. Its strange, swollen silhouette symbolizes both Soviet ambition and the pitfalls of overcomplicated engineering. Though rarely seen outside photographs, it remains an enduring entry in aviation's catalog of ugly aircraft. The Edgeley Optica emerged in 1979 as a specialized observation aircraft designed to rival helicopters in surveillance roles. Its most distinctive feature was the massive bubble canopy, providing nearly 270 degrees of panoramic visibility. While practical for observation, the dome made the aircraft look alien. Combined with a skinny fuselage, stubby wings, and ducted fan pusher propeller, the Optica resembled a flying goldfish bowl rather than a conventional airplane. Intended for police work, mapping, and environmental monitoring, the Optica cruised slowly and quietly, burning less fuel than helicopters. Operators appreciated its economy and unobstructed views. However, its odd proportions drew constant ridicule. The cockpit looked oversized for the body, while the narrow undercarriage gave it a spindly, insect-like stance on the ground. Despite initial enthusiasm, only about 20 aircraft were ever built. Financial instability plagued production, and a devastating factory fire destroyed many units. Accidents, including a fatal crash during a demonstration flight, further damaged its reputation. By the 1990s, the Optica had virtually disappeared from service, surviving only in small numbers with private operators and museums. Functionally, it achieved its design goals, but aesthetically, it never overcame criticism. To observers, it looked clumsy and fragile. To enthusiasts, it was a clever, if underappreciated, tool that arrived at the wrong time. The Edgeley Optica stands today as one of aviation's ugliest curiosities, a machine that succeeded technically but failed commercially, forever remembered more for its strange silhouette than its practical utility. The Grumman JF Duck, introduced in 1933, was a unique amphibious biplane built for utility rather than elegance. Its fuselage incorporated a large central float, allowing operations from water, while retractable landing gear enabled land-based missions. This hybrid approach created an ungainly shape, a bulky body with stubby wings stacked biplane style and a vertical tail that seemed undersized for the rest of the aircraft. Visually, the Duck never looked balanced. The integration of the float into the fuselage made it appear swollen, while struts and braces cluttered its silhouette. On the water, it resembled a toy more than a military aircraft. Yet despite its awkward profile, the JF Duck proved remarkably versatile. It served in reconnaissance, transport, rescue, and gunnery training roles for both the U.S. Navy and Coast Guard. Performance was adequate but unremarkable. The Wright R1820 radial engine provided reliability, though speed and range were limited compared to dedicated fighters or patrol aircraft. Its strength lay in adaptability. Being able to land on beaches, carriers, or remote waterways made it invaluable for secondary duties. During World War II, the duck's usefulness extended to search and rescue operations, where its amphibious design saved stranded pilots. Nevertheless, it remained an object of humor among aircrews, who mocked its chunky appearance. Production ceased by the early 1940s, replaced by more modern amphibians. Today, the JF Duck is remembered with affection for its service, but its clumsy proportions secure its place among aviation's ugliest designs. Utility triumphed over beauty, leaving a legacy both respected and ridiculed. The Britten-Norman Trislander might be one of the strangest commuter planes ever to enter regular service. Built in the 1970s as a stretched version of the Islander, this aircraft carried 3 engines, 2 on the wings and 1 perched awkwardly atop the tail. The layout made sense for performance, but visually it turned the Trislander into a flying oddity. The long, boxy fuselage looked ungainly, and the oversized vertical stabilizer supporting that tail engine seemed almost comical. Passengers often joked that boarding the Trislander felt like climbing into a bus with wings. Its high-pitched engine noise and cramped interior only added to the feeling of a machine that prioritized utility over grace. Despite its appearance, though, the aircraft proved incredibly reliable in short-haul operations. Airlines in the Channel Islands and the Caribbean favored it for its ability to operate from short, rugged airstrips. Still, the sight of that tail engine spinning above the fuselage never looked natural. Aviation enthusiasts sometimes compared it to a flying praying mantis or a child's mismatched toy. Even today, surviving Trislanders turn heads wherever they fly, not for elegance but for sheer weirdness. Its reputation is a paradox. Ugly and awkward, yet dependable and loved by small operators who valued function far above form. By the 1950s, jet speeds were climbing so fast that researchers worried about pilot endurance. Their answer? Make the pilot lie flat. The Gloucester Meteor F-8 prone pilot experiment reconfigured Britain's first jet fighter by fitting a pilot's cockpit into the nose, with the aviator lying face down, stretched like Superman. In theory, the prone position reduced the effects of G-forces and allowed better control at high speeds. In reality, it was bizarre, impractical, and visually unsettling. The pilot's tiny glass canopy made the nose look swollen and distorted, like a tumor grafted onto the Meteor's sleek fuselage. Getting in and out was a nightmare. Pilots had to crawl through cramped spaces, and emergency ejection was nearly impossible. Visibility wasn't great either, as the position limited head movement. Flight testing showed that while the concept technically worked, it offered few real advantages. The uncomfortable layout and complicated controls outweighed any marginal improvements in G-force tolerance. By the late 1950s, ejection seats and cockpit pressurization solved the very problems the prone pilot had been meant to address. The modified Meteor went into museums rather than mass production. Today, it stands as a surreal reminder of how desperation for innovation sometimes leads to solutions that are more grotesque than groundbreaking. If there was ever an award for ugliest production aircraft, the PZLM-15 Belfagor would take it. Introduced by Poland in the 1970s, it holds the dubious distinction of being the only jet-powered biplane in history. Designed for agricultural spraying, the Belfagor combined everything awkward about Cold War aviation into one noisy package. Its ungainly double wings clashed with a bulky fuselage, while the rear-mounted Ivchenko turbojet shrieked far louder than any farm field needed. The nickname Belfagor came from a demon of Slavic folklore, and it was fitting. The aircraft's boxy frame, stubby nose, and oversized wing struts made it appear demonic in its own way, brutal, loud, and undeniably unattractive. Farmers didn't appreciate it either. The jet consumed enormous amounts of fuel, producing ear-splitting noise while delivering no meaningful advantage over cheaper propeller aircraft. Despite its flaws, hundreds were built under Soviet pressure, foisted onto collective farms whether operators wanted them or not. Many sat idle in fields, abandoned once their impracticality became undeniable. Today, surviving examples are oddities at air shows, often mocked as the tractor that shouldn't fly. The Belfagor was living proof that not every technological leap makes sense. It remains a case study in ugly, inefficient engineering forced into service by politics rather than practicality. Asymmetry in aircraft design is rare, and the Blohm Voss BV-141 proved why. Developed in Nazi Germany during World War II, this reconnaissance aircraft featured one of the strangest layouts in aviation history. Its fuselage was split in two, The cockpit sat in a glazed pod on the starboard side, while the port side housed the engine and fuselage spine. The design aimed to give the crew unparalleled visibility, but it looked grotesquely unbalanced. From the ground, it seemed almost impossible that the BV-141 could fly. Yet remarkably it did, and quite well. Test pilots praised its stability, and the offset cockpit did provide excellent observation views. But looks matter, even in war, and Luftwaffe commanders were unconvinced by the lopsided silhouette. Production resources were instead funneled into more conventional aircraft like the Focke-Wulf 189. Visually, the BV-141 resembled a flying insect, its glazed gondola bulging like an eye on a stalk. Photographs shocked even seasoned pilots, who doubted its airworthiness. To this day, it's remembered as one of the most unusual and ugly combat planes ever built, a design that proved technically viable but too bizarre for mass acceptance. The Boeing XP-9, introduced in 1930, marked Boeing's attempt to leap from biplanes into monoplane fighters. Unfortunately, it did so with a design that was both awkward and unsafe. Its massive parasol wing sat high above the fuselage, supported by thick struts that obstructed the pilot's forward vision. The effect was disastrous. The pilot could barely see where he was going, let alone fight effectively. Aerodynamically, the XP-9 was unstable, and pilots described its handling as clumsy and unpredictable. Its bulky fuselage and oversized wing made it look heavy and unbalanced, lacking the elegance of later monoplanes like the P-36 or Spitfire. On the ground, it resembled a barn door with landing gear. While in the air, it confirmed that early monoplane design still had a long way to go. Only a single prototype was ever built, and after poor test results, the project was scrapped. Boeing quickly shifted focus back to more conventional designs, learning painful lessons from the XP-9's failure. Today, the XP-9 survives only in grainy photos, where its bulky frame and obstructed cockpit tell the story. It is remembered not as a stepping stone to greatness, but as one of Boeing's ugliest and most short-lived fighters. Aviation history is filled with legends of beauty and grace, but these 15 designs remind us that not every aircraft earned admiration. From bloated giants like the Caproni CA-60 to asymmetric oddities like the BV-141, ugliness has taken many forms in the skies. Each of these machines taught engineers valuable lessons, even if their appearance drew laughter instead of awe. Some flew briefly, others served for years, but all left unforgettable marks on aviation history.